in the fall. That would be cool, or even the snow would be cool.
Volunteer to sing. I did go to the community sing along thing at the game. That was really
So well attended.
No, there were probably like 40 people there.
That's great.
Yeah.
I had a dress rehearsal for
Excellent. Well, thank you all for being here tonight on December 11th for the Philomath City Council meeting. Happy to have you all here. Happy holidays. We're first going to get started with a roll call.
Jessica Andrade. Cosby.
Here.
Diane Crocker.
Here.
Matt Lehman.
Here.
Teresa Nielsen.
Here.
And Chaz Jones.
Here. Thank you.
Christopher McMorrin said he would not be able to attend tonight.
Okay. Hope he is doing something fun. All right, so tonight on the agenda, we have public comments, and we'll go through our consent agenda, then we're going to discuss some new business, including the library expansion feasibility study, RFP. I'm going to add one thing to the agenda, discussion of the city manager evaluation and press release. We'll then go and talk about the Ordinance 881 for the Public Services Franchise Agreement, and then have our manager report. And before we go into executive session. But first, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We do not.
Excellent. We have a consent agenda in the packet. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Great. Second? Second. So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey, seconded by Councilor Lehman. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Excellent. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the library expansion feasibility study. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
I can. So this has been a strategic plan for a while, and we've had discussions for a while. We've been putting money aside in our land building equipment fund for a while, and finally got to the point where had some time to put something together. Hopefully had some time to go through it. Hopefully not too much detail. It's a little wordy, but wanting to just get the council buy off on this RP so we can get out there. In conversations with the library, we have narrowed the scope of this kind of exploration down to the existing site. Some preliminary conversations about looking at other sites, doing other things, and we just really feel like the library can still function and do what it's doing at its current location. They just need some more space at the location, but they like where they're at. They like the parking. There's a lot of things they like. They like obviously the background, the history of the library, and the construction by the volunteers, everything. So they don't feel like they need something so different that the existing site won't work. They just need an expansion. So really looking to just keep the scope to that. It does include a review of the existing site and how they are using the current space and how that could be optimized with an expansion of some sort. So that would be included. I'm going to have them look at floodplain regulations as part of that, do some costing for us and put a cost estimate together, and then eventually some renderings as well. There's language in there about some public outreach that they'll be doing along the process as well. But yeah, really excited to be taking this next step. I think it's, I'd say too far overdue, but definitely needed at this time to start looking at expanding. So this is that first step. The approval tonight is just the RP itself. The timeframes are on there. Hopefully to get something back to you first of next year to review and make a selection, and then get going on contract and get underway some public outreach. So happy to answer any specific questions, but otherwise just going for a motion to approve the RP and direct staff to start publicizing it.
I wanted to ask, the space behind the library was one of the event spaces for which we gathered public Is that included in this project?
It's not directly, no.
Could it be?
Well, it could be. So when the contractors look at this, we're gonna give them a copy of that. It was the downtown revitalization study where that was one of the things they looked at. So we'll give them a copy of that. Here's another consultant's view of what could happen back here. If I recall, there was like a little playground area back there and some walking trails to connect it kind of to the back and over. So they'll get copies of that, and we'll kind of leave it to them and the general public on how that gets guided. I mean, at this level of doing it, I mean, there's some room between the library and the police department that could be used. There's, other areas without having a major impact too far back there. But so yes, it'll definitely be considered. It's not word for word directly associated here, but we'll give them copies of the plans that have been done up to this point.
It would seem if you're raising funds for the library, it would be the opportune time to raise funds for the event space.
Yeah, I agree. Councilor Andrade.
Yeah, this is exciting. Again, it is overdue. Question about the funding of it. So it says that the entire project is $4 million. And that currently the funds available are $320,000. And that ongoing fundraising efforts would be the remaining $3,680,000. How feasible is this within the 1 to 2 year period that you have laid out here in the RFP? Like, are we expecting to receive funding for this in some way through grants or through private donors? Like, have there been commitments? I don't know what you can and can't speak to.
There's really been no commitments. We know that the foundation, the library foundation, is eager to help and engage in the effort. We looked at other libraries that have been constructed recently throughout the state. You don't build libraries often, and so they're kind of sporadic. But, just looking over the last 5 years, libraries have been constructed, looking at size. We really kind of put a number in there. I mean, it's not a $50 million expansion, right? It's not a $1 million expansion. So, we went a little conservative there at the $4 million. We may find that for all of the things we want, if it's going to include additional park space and others, it may be up closer to $6 million. But really just trying to get them in the ballpark of what we're looking at for the expansion. But we've really not had any discussion on the fundraising side of it outside of partnering with the foundation and then what we can get from private. There's some foundations out there that also, outside of the library foundation, there's other foundations that are pretty generous for libraries that we'll be looking at as well. But my experience, until you've got an idea of what the plan is to build and some pretty pictures and the renderings to go with it, it's really hard to do some capital campaigning. So this is step one. The time frame for the 2 years to construction is really more 2 years to probably being ready to even start talking about construction. We're going to have several years of funding and looking after funds to kick this off. So the city obviously doesn't have this money sitting in the bank, right? So we're going to have to do some outreach for sure.
So to clarify the timeline for it, because the way that it's kind of structured here, I don't know if I misinterpreted it, but it's like once a plan was in place and selected, that's when the 2-year mark begins.
Well, this RFP is really just to get through, I guess, a different timeline. I mean, I'm just seeing.
Because it has construction schedule listed in project overview is number 2. And at the very end, it has activity and completion dates. And it has the architect selection process with all the dates, the planning to be determined, design process to be determined, and then construction schedule. And it doesn't say, but
Yeah.
It
could be that quick if the funding goes very quick, but it could be delayed out if the funding's not there as well.
Okay, so to clarify, it's just dependent on when we hit that 4 million mark or whatever it ends up being.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
The way that the proposal is written, just on that point, is whoever comes on as the architect here, the way this is written is they could extend that contract over to also do the architecture and the consulting and engineering work during construction phase. But this RFP is really just for that initial feasibility study,
Okay.
with the option to renew and to expand into the construction phase.
Thank you.
Any additional? Ozzy?
Is it typical that an architectural firm would also assist in the fundraising?
Usually not the fundraising, except for the designs belong to them, and you might have an architect who would go to events to show, here's our here's our rendering. Can't remember the word for here's our rendering. This is the plan, and to kind of discuss things. That's pretty typical, but not a. They would not be running the fundraiser.
They're going to defend their recommendations. Here's what we heard from the community. Here's what we heard from the staff. Here's what we heard of the needs. Here's our recommendation based on that information. And so they're going to do that portion of it. So that may be a presentation at some point, or a pamphlet or informational brochure or something like that to give the background. But, short of that, that's not really what they're doing.
Okay, and there's a term used here called a plan holders list. What is that?
I don't know. What page is that on?
That is on page 2. The third paragraph from the bottom, the second to the last line, a plan holders list will not be maintained.
Or what line was that?
That's third to last paragraph.
Third to last
Second to last sentence. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure, that references.
Well, it's probably out of place for this particular RFP, and probably should be stricken. I think the idea is often plans, you're sending them out to people to give you an estimate, then you maintain a list of who those plans have done.
Oh, okay.
So that you can contact them. They're saying they're not going to do that for this, and I think we probably just have a duplication issue from.
Corrections, would you like me to provide those to our city recorder?
Sure. Just minor corrections. Yeah, sounds great. Sounds ready?
To that point, I don't know if this is one of them, but on page 10, number 5 of the proposal evaluation, experience with the knowledge of green building design and its application to coastal construction. I don't think we're considered coastal. But also on that note, I am appreciative of that inclusion of green building design as part of the RFP. And on that note, I was hoping to add a section. It would be in several places because like the specific questions to be answered, but then as part of the evaluation criteria, like I get copied or whatever. I would like to add, describe your experience with and knowledge of accessible design beyond ADA standards. And I will make that a motion. I apologize. Do you need me to repeat that, Ruth? City recorder.
So you're
I'm sorry.
the motion.
Was it a motion?
Yeah, I followed up with it as a motion.
Is it a place that you were putting it?
Wherever it's applicable, because it's in multiple spots. So like on page 8 and 9, there's like specific proposal requirements that have specific questions to be answered. And there's like, so adding a letter to for 5 with this information, and then it would also be in the proposal evaluation, 7A evaluation criteria. And I'm not entirely sure if it would be added else anyway. Those two places. And the language that I would like to include would be describe your experience with and knowledge of accessible design beyond ADA standards.
All encompassing, so what would they be missing?
So actually a lot. I don't have any specific answers, but I do know that talking with my friends who have mobility disabilities, ADA is the bare minimum. It's never enough. And I guess a lot of creative ways of thinking about spaces and designing spaces that instead of, like we have this set room that we always use with, and then we like fit things to the room in order to make it accessible, designing the space so that it is all around more accessible instead of like kind of shoehorning it in, I don't quite know how else to describe it.
That was a motion.
That was a motion.
Counselor Nielsen.
Oh. Counselor Nielsen. Oh, wait. First of all, do we have a second? Second?
I'll second it.
Right. We have a second by Counselor Kazi. Counselor Nielsen.
I think the only thing that I am concerned about is that word beyond ADA standards. I think that word beyond can be very misleading and also so vague that the ceiling on that is, I don't know, I don't think it's clear enough as far as what we're asking for. If we're going to ask for something, which I'm totally in agreement with, it has to be something that actually can be met and not so vague that it has no power. So saying something beyond ADA, what does that mean beyond ADA requirement, standards? That seems to me quite vague.
Counselor Kazi.
I wonder if we could rephrase it to ask them to provide examples of work they've done which provided accessibility standards that exceeded ADA requirements. Would that work?
Dante, is there
I would like that.
a motion to amend, or can we substitute that motion?
Whatever
Sure.
the appropriate thing to do.
Do we do it?
And could that be meet or exceed, or does it have to be all?
Well, I think we would want to exceed, I mean, any architect would have to meet ADA standards. And if they haven't exceeded them, there's have anything to share with us.
Okay, so we have a proposed amendment and the motion maker, the motioner agrees.
I am down to switch it out.
Great. Ruth, do you need that repeated at all? Or are we good? And maybe you could tell us what.
That was what we said.
So we're substituting examples of meeting or exceeding for the word beyond.
Examples of work they have done in which ADA accessibility standards were exceeded.
So you're just completely substituting
Yes.
the prior, basically the prior motion.
Yep. Okay. Further discussion? All in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed, please raise your hand, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries 5-1. Oh, I'm sorry, 5-0 with an abstention. Counselor Nielsen. Okay. And we have the corrections. Do I have a motion to release this RFP as amended? Counselor
I
Lehman,
move that we authorize city staff to release this RFP
And I will second.
as amended.
so we have a motion made by Counselor Lehman and seconded by Counselor Crocker. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Excellent.
Just to help inform that motion, it is not unusual for people to ask questions or requests for proposals, requests for bids to be amended as they've been issued and as people are reviewing them and getting back. And I wouldn't want the council to think that that part of the process wouldn't still be in place. So this is approval to some extent of this RFP to do this work in this concept in general, but you still might end up with the city manager or whoever is responding to questions before proposals are submitted saying, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. That also needs to be included. So expect that.
Your addendums?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Next, we're going to discuss the city manager's evaluation and press release. Councilor Kazi, did you want to talk about what we have?
Certainly. Councilor McMorrin and I prepared this. This is a draft that was actually based on last year's press release. And it was reviewed by Councilor McMorrin, and then this work was also put in the amendment, which I'm very comfortable with. But I think the copies in our packet predate the changes that Mr. Bergman suggested, so I'll have to ask him to speak to those changes.
Sure. So, sometime writing this, and I sent it to Councilor Kazi ahead of time. Rather than try to recreate this in my mind on the spot, I'm going to just read this, which I don't typically like to do, but I think it will make more sense and take less time. Thank you for taking time to draft the press release. I'd like to recommend one change that I believe more accurately reflects this year's evaluation. Unless either of you are adamantly opposed to it, let's flip to Councilor Kazi and Councilor McMorrin. I'll give this rest of this version in front of the City Council Monday night. The last sentence of the first paragraph, which you have in front of you, reads, the average performance rating on each of the 4 competencies was between acceptable and exceptional. Although factually accurate, this statement does not account for the rating of exceeds expectations, which lies halfway between acceptable and exceptional. So the reader is left to assume that my performance is somewhere above acceptable, but not at the level of exceptional. A more reflective summary would identify the rating of exceeds expectations, which I received in 3 of the 4 categories. Exceeds expectations is more favorable than above average, but not exceptional. So I'd like to recommend the following change. First, change the order of the competencies earlier in the paragraph so that council relations is stated last. Then the last paragraph would read, quote, the average performance rating on the first 3 competencies was exceeds expectations. And on the 4th area, council relations, he received an average score of acceptable. Please let me know if you're good with these changes.
And Councilor McMorrin was also good with it? It was. That's now the draft that's before us. Okay, good. Excellent. Any further comments, discussion of the press release? I had one thing I wanted to bring up. Noting that what Chris just mentioned, that 3 out of the 4 competencies were above a 4.0 and one was 3.7, average being 3. That last sentence in the full press release, Mr. Workman plans to improve rapport with council through regular check-ins, and each council member outside of council meetings commit more time and focus. It seems to me that having this ending of a press release on a negative note when it makes it sound like there's something to improve upon. But the reality is that acceptable is a 3. 7, between 3.7 and 4.2. That it seems to me that the supervisor would be okay with acceptable. If you're going to do something, if you have a less than acceptable, then there's something to improve upon. But if you're exceeding acceptable, there's nothing to improve upon. I mean, you can do better, but you shouldn't suggest that something needs improvement.
That's fun. Thank you. I included that sentence just based on the conversation we had. But you raise a very good point, and I would be perfectly happy deleting that last sentence if that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. It just seems a little bit off
Okay.
to me.
What others think?
Yeah. Councilman Patty.
Perhaps instead, move the first sentence of the second paragraph to the very end. And that way you're ending on a positive note.
That is true, but I still think that it suggests that there's something to improve upon. And if the score is acceptable in all cases, I just don't think it's appropriate to necessarily say that these things need improving.
I disagree on that. Granted, I am not one of the average for that area.
Sure.
I think it would be a good thing to include so that there's always areas to improve, and if there weren't, we wouldn't be human. So
I completely agree. And if I had scored as a top rated anything, but slightly under, and someone told me that I needed to improve so that I could be the best ever in the world, I would say that's not realistic, right? Like,
well,
if I didn't quite win the world record because I was just slightly slower, that wouldn't make sense for you to say, oh, you didn't do very well. You didn't win the world record.
would you like a doctor or a surgeon who got straight C's to be operating on you?
Right.
Setting aside world records and surgeons, if we strike that last sentence, it still closes with areas for improvement. And we all have areas for improvement. Quite frankly, I'm glad I was evaluated using this thing. I found it really depressing. But anyway, perhaps I could.
Let's make a motion. I'll move that we strike that last sentence and that we replace with the following. While the city manager's performance exceeded expectations in most categories, the city council has full confidence in the city manager's leadership and wish to emphasize that the city is in good hands moving forward. A motion on the table made by myself and seconded by Councilor Crocker. Any further discussion or comment?
Could you be kind enough to read that one more time?
Happy to. While the city manager's performance exceeded expectations in most categories, the city council has full confidence in the city manager's leadership and wishes to emphasize that the city is in good hands moving forward.
That's a contrasting statement.
You're right, I noticed it as I was reading it.
As instead of while.
Yeah. So yeah, strike it. We just replace while with as. So as the city manager's performance exceeds expectations in most categories, the city council has full confidence in the city manager's leadership and wishes to emphasize that the city is in good hands moving forward. Comments, discussion? Councilor Lehman?
I'm fine with that language, as long as it gets emphasized in this room, at least, that I would like to find out about significant city events from the city manager and not from Brad or other people in the community.
Yeah, I think we noted that prior.
Not in the public session.
Oh, okay. Okay, noted. Any further discussion? All in favor of the proposed motion, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand, say nay. Abstentions? So motion carries with 5 yeses and 1 abstention. Okay,
That's just the amendment, right?
thank you. Do we have a motion to release the press release?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Councilor Lehman, seconded by Councilor Kazi. Any further discussion? All in favor, please.
Is the motion as read with the amendments that were read tonight? Just making sure.
I'm crafty, but I'm not that crafty. Yes, as read.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we still have 1 abstention?
It's another time.
Okay. You said it's a no?
Yes.
Sorry. So we have motion carries 5 to 1.
And the press is here, so it's released.
That's here, and it's probably already on the internet.
Hand it over. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate those comments. And again, I appreciate the evaluation, good feedback all the way around. And obviously things I still need to work on to better serve you and better serve the community. And that's what I'm here to do. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the continued support. It's good to have it. As you often tell me individually, it's a tough job, and it is a tough job, but I do enjoy it. There's highs and lows, but it's a good profession, and I'm happy to be here and plan to be here for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I apologize. I wished I would have bumped the ordinance 881 up to the top of the agenda, since we have someone here very interested in that topic. But anyway, Chris, do you want to walk us through next topic on the agenda, ordinance 881, franchise agreement for public services?
I will. So ordinance 881, this is an update to our franchise agreement. Again, hopefully everybody had a chance to go through it. I won't necessarily go page by page, but I'm happy to answer specific questions here. Julie Jackson is here as well from the Public Services. She's the Government Relations Manager? Municipal Manager? Okay, I want to get that right, sorry. I just refer to her as Julie because she's the go-to. She's the know-all. So appreciate her being here tonight to help answer any questions that the council might have as well. This was, I think, the first franchise that I looked at when I started in Philomath, and so we took a hard look at it then, did some updating. This one has fewer updates. Some of the updates are really definitions, kind of tweaks of things that we're just not doing anymore. We definitely try to take advantage of the fact that we are in Corvallis' shadow. I mean, we're in a big waste shed. And Corvallis is the mother lode of that. And so there's a lot of things that happen within our waste shed that we get the advantage of, but we also recognize that there's a cost of doing a lot of things that they do in Corvallis for them to do here. And so things like the hazardous waste disposal events. Yeah, if we were isolated and we're 100 miles from anywhere, we would want one locally, but the fact is they do them in Corvallis. It's not that far out of the way for our residents and business owners to go to Corvallis once a year for a waste disposal event for hazardous materials. And so, you know, that type of language is in here, that we recognize that there's some of those things that as the franchisee, they're going to provide for waste services and waste management that aren't right in Philomath, but they're going to be happening over in Corvallis. We did expand, and I'll point to the city's big recycling event that we've been doing. That has morphed over the years a little bit. And I'm going to try to get to this section here. I think it's under franchisee.
3.7.3.
Thank you. So it's in red on, 3.7.3. This is the annual residential recycling event for residential customers only. This is not intended for large businesses to stockpile their trash and to be able to get rid of it for free for residences. And then we did add in that the e-cycling is available for electronics as well as scrap metal. And then you'll note the last paragraph there, or the last sentence there, a limited amount of furniture, mattresses, other household trash specifically approved by the city's code compliance officer for properties under enforcement action will be accepted at no additional charge. City staff will verify residency during the event. They'll also be verifying who's got those permissions. I envisioned some type of a coupon or a voucher of some sort that the code enforcement officer will give out. So, that was, I appreciate Republic Services being open to that. We have really tried to keep this a recycling event, but it is an important tool for us on code enforcement that we can go to homeowners who maybe you've been stockpiling or that we're working on to help clean up the properties. This is a great tool for us to be able to help them do that at a pretty low cost. Just getting it to the public works yard as opposed to try and get it all the way out to the transfer station or out to the dump itself. So I should have called it the dump. What's the correct term?
Landfill.
Landfill, thanks. Out to the landfill. Anyway.
In my eye.
I did, I felt them.
You did use weight share.
Bonus points for that. The eyebrows went up when I did that, she was surprised. Anyway, like I said, happy to answer any specific questions on here. Not a lot haven't changed. The pricing that we had before will continue, so there are some minor adjustments that could be made on an annual basis. That'll continue. We get informed of those. We don't necessarily approve them every year if they're within the threshold that's allowed every year. As we know, costs continue to go up, and we're going to continue to see those. If it's outside of the parameters that are set here, then that would come in front of you for an approval. So with that, I see hand up, so I'll just go to answering questions at this point. And Councilor Cox.
Includes the public waste bins permanently located within the downtown sidewalks. Do those bins look like our regular garbage bins, or they're the plastic covered ones, or do they have anything fancier or more stable for downtown that maybe is more labor intensive? I don't know.
Yeah. So the Streetscape project, they're installing garbage bins there. So that's it's down. We talked about this as a change. It is something new. We don't really know how labor intensive that's going to be. We're not really sure if there's an insert, if there's a bag, and there's some unknowns there. But we do have commitment from Julie again to work on that topic and see what that's going to be. There may be a little bit of trade-off there on, how much labor is involved versus how much garbage is picked up. We just don't know. I mean, honestly, we don't know how much those bins are going to be filled up. Are they going to need emptied every week? Is it going to be once a month? There's some unknowns there. So it's written in there the way it is because, again, Republic Services is generous. They want to help in that endeavor. They want garbage. They don't want these things overflowing everywhere. But there's some uncertainties there on what that will look like. They'll be installed by the end of the summer.
They have to get out of their truck to that's what I was.
I believe Julie said the ones in Corvallis that are picked up, it's like a pickup truck that goes, and it's not the big machines doing it. It'll be a different.
We call a rear load truck, and it's, what you typically think of the old garbage truck with the guy that goes around and throws canning.
Cart lifting trucks, it'll be something different.
Okay.
Good question.
I have a question about a few things that I have a hard time finding how to dispose of them. Come on up.
Come on up, Julie.
I have a hard time with fluorescent. Don't know where to go, how to do. I've tried calling and.
So LED light bulbs, just the small household ones. We have a container at our depot
on Walnut. It's actually off Bellevue in the back of our yard. And you can bring those anytime. It should be open 7 days a week from 7 to 7. Those. The fluorescents, the long tubes and the ballasts, those go to a hazardous waste event. And the reason is all fluorescent tubes have a little bit of mercury in them. And a lot of times people will just throw one in a cart. And for a driver to pull up, even, you know, they're right by the window where the arm lifts and goes. And when you break that, it releases that little bit of mercury vapor. And we don't want our drivers breathing that, and we don't want you breathing that when you throw it in the cart. They're very easy to break. So we just recommend, if you buy them in one of those long kind of boxes that they tend to come in, keep that in the corner of your garage and put them in there when they're done, and bring them to a hazardous waste event. And there's no charge for that, but it really is the safest way to dispose of them.
I couldn't find that on your website.
You know what? We can explain that a little bit more.
Thank you. Councilor Kazi?
Yeah, I noticed on the 4th page of this document that food soil paper is no longer accepted in the organic waste.
Yeah. So, food soil paper, a cart full of paper towels. And we're not really in the business of composting paper. That's not really, I mean, we do need some carbon in the compost, but that really isn't something that works at the compost facility. So we had to say, okay, no food soil paper. And then, of course, about 4 years ago, we, along with all the other composters in Oregon, signed on with DEQ. They came to us and said, would you sign a letter explaining why we don't like the compostable materials, specifically the PLA plastic materials and other compostables. DEQ has done kind of a cradle to grave study, life cycle analysis of that, and it really is a lot more resources used to make and compost those materials than if you just used a paper product and threw it away or recycled what you could of it. So they have turned out to be not really the salvation that we thought they might be. And so we've taken those out of the waste stream for the compost facility as well. Also, PLA is still a plastic. Even though it's made from corn, it's still a plastic, and it contributes to microplastics in the compost, even though it will break down to a certain level. And one of the real focuses at our compost facility is to do everything we can to eliminate any plastics in the compost, because we think that's going to be a big topic going forward.
So what should I
Oh, sorry.
do?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what should I do with my food soil paper?
Well, so I'll tell you, if you have a couple paper napkins and you throw them, or a paper towel, you can throw them in with the compost, that's okay, but it should be less than 1% of your cart. Okay. And that's a hard, these are hard things. We used to teach a master recycler class, and we used to tell those people, you get to do special things because you know now. But it's really hard to say that, because then we get a cart full of pizza boxes and food soil paper. So it's a tough one.
Okay, because
A few pieces, nobody's going to call you on a few pieces, but if it's too much, they might not pick up your material.
the paper towels and things have to go in garbage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Follow-up to that, I am under the impression that paper towels are compostable. I guess, what is the reason why?
Well, paper towels, yeah, the material will compost eventually, but it adds, especially in the summertime, it adds a lot of carbon into the mix, and we don't need paper flying around to the compost facility. It's really a facility that's set up for organic material out of your yard and food waste. And so, and the piles are open piles, open windrows. And so when there's a lot of paper towel, and sometimes if any of you would love to see that facility, we'd be happy to do tours of that facility. What you see is some of those pieces of paper flying around the facility. And so generally when there's a lot of paper, it's not going to get composted anyway. It's going to get swept up before it becomes a problem flying around. So it's really
almost more logistical than anything else. The other piece of it is we don't want paper towels out of restrooms because we have people at that facility who are picking out material, and we just don't want them around any kind of bloodborne pathogens or any kind of human waste.
More questions? Recycling gets in many cases, it's getting a bad rap these days. People don't know, aren't confident that's being recycled. Can you tell us about your recycling process?
I can tell you that anything that we tell you is recyclable will be recycled. We follow that material along, but not only do we do that, the state of Oregon is pretty vigilant through DEQ. Every year we have to report how many tons of material we send to a variety of different recycling facilities. And then that facility also has to report how much they receive. And it has to be pretty darn close in tonnages. We talk about big amounts, but it's got to be pretty close, or we get a call from DEQ saying, hey, we don't have the same number here. Let's figure out why. So there are a lot of checks and balances, and I think that's one of the most important things. Since we talked about China Sword about 4 or 5 years ago, in 2018, some really good things have happened. One of the things that happened was that it shone a light on where a lot of material was going in the world, and we can tell you that almost nothing from what you put in the recycling goes overseas anymore. Most of the material is recycled domestically, and that is happening more and more. We have just opened a facility with Public Services in Las Vegas called the Plastics Polymer Center. It's kind of the first of its kind in the nation, and it's meant to be a secondary source of plastics. So a lot of plastics that we can't take for recycling because there isn't a market for it. We're hoping this facility is going to serve the whole West Coast, and we're hoping that material from Oregon will end up there, sort of that secondary pile of plastics in the MRFs in Portland, the material recovery facilities. And it's intended to create circularity with recycling. So what they're doing is they're looking for specific kinds of plastic, and they already have, for example, Coca-Cola signed on as a buyer of that plastic. So they are cleaning it and shredding it to the size that they want and shipping it right out to be used again. So we hope that we can create some more markets. That sounds like a long way away, Las Vegas, but consider that it used to go to Asian markets.
Right.
So it's a lot closer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? I have a motion. Mr. Cosby?
I just had a couple of comments. I assume that we'll be finalizing this as opposed to Republic Services. Is that correct? In section 4.1.2, it ends with sections, but there's section 6.7 written notice. It looks like this attention city manager should be up in the if to the city address. This is if you want a name or a title. Yes. Point 7.
Oh, 6.7. Let me get that. Oh, we're okay. Anything that comes to us at that address is going to get to the appropriate person. I think we're okay. Chris called me a government affairs manager because that's what it used to be, and we change titles periodically, so it's probably safest just to say manager. It'll get to the probably to the general manager first.
Well, we could correct it.
Also, the opening paragraph refers to Ordinance 786 being repealed. Final page refers to 568.
Should be 786 on the final page.
Okay, thank you.
Current franchise ordinance.
So we have a motion to approve with those changes.
No motion. This will be
This will be an ordinance.
Oh,
That would be read by the.
When you get back.
Let Jim do his job.
Yeah, what a stupid job. An ordinance regulating solid waste management, including without limitation, granting an exclusive solid waste franchise to Republic Services of Corvallis, establishing service standards and establishing public responsibility, repealing Ordinance 786, prescribing penalties and stating an effective date.
And Ruth, you'll do a roll call vote? Yep.
Teresa Nielsen,
Sorry, yes.
Leon Rudder. Yes. Bruce Posey,
Yes.
Diane Crocker,
Yes.
Matt Lehman,
Yes.
Josh Jones.
Yes. Hey. Congrats on that.
And I just want to thank you for the partnership we feel like we have with the city of Philomath. You guys have always been great to work with, and as Chris said, as we work through the city cans or whatever that looks like, we just feel confident leaving that language in because we know we'll work out a good situation for everybody. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And have a really wonderful holiday.
Thank you. With that, we're on to management reports.
Read through that, happy to answer any questions. Then busy kind of wrapping things up in here. A little bit of time off and vacation plan between now and through New Year's a little bit, so we'll be a little bit more sporadic, but it's been good wrapping a few things up. Again, happy to answer questions. I will just make a note. We've got our, well, like I said, a lot of end of the year stuff, kind of for the third time, I'll say, wrapping things up, trying to look at the strategic plan. I'm trying to wrap up the quarter, get things out there for that. I would anticipate in January, you'll have a, second quarter update for the strategic plan. So it'll be coming out at the January meeting. We'll also have, although all of the positions openings are still out for the different committees and boards that are out there. So again, no neighbors or friends or people around that are interested, please direct them to the city's website to apply for those positions. There's still several openings. And that'll be happening at your January meeting as well as looking at current council assignments and making any shifts or changes that need to be made there. So January tends to be kind of a nuts and bolts administrative meeting. I am planning to have that second meeting in January. So if you don't have that circled on the calendar, plan for that fourth Monday of January to meet. And we will be taking care of a few more resolutions. So Jim has a few things that out. We're going to hold a lot of that stuff off of the January meeting and bump that to the second meeting. The first meeting in January, we'll bump it to the second meeting in January, just so we can make sure we get those board and committee assignments made.
At this moment, that those will be at 6 o'clock. Continue to be at 6 o'clock. Second meeting.
I don't think we've talked about it yet, so that's probably an open discussion item that we can talk about tonight. Does the council have a preference on the 7 o'clock start versus 6 o'clock start for that second meeting?
Mark? Just gets us out earlier.
Yeah. 7 in the past, just historically, the 7 o'clock, I think to the councils previously, it felt like it gave more time for the public to get home, grab dinner, get stuff settled and get here, as opposed to 6 o'clock start. It also allowed for a work session prior to the meeting, so you could do a work session at 5:36 and still have an hour and a half before the regular session at 7. And there was opposition and bouncing that time around. If there's work session, it's at 7. If it's not, then it's at 6. And that felt like it was inconsistent for the public as well. So that's why we've traditionally done the 7 as opposed to 6. But charter says we have to meet once a month. Time is up to you as the council.
6 o'clock seems to be working when we're doing it. Yeah.
anything.
I don't see anybody.
Everybody's eyes are
Anyway.
down. So
Yeah.
Nobody suggests
7 o'clock
otherwise.
first, and there's 7 o'clock on the second week, and we'll do 6 o'clock on the fourth week. Okay. Thanks, Ruth, for bringing that
Unless something happens. Yeah,
subject to change. Yeah.
cool. Okay, any council reports?
Well, I had a question, following up on DEI training, and the logistics for reaching out to committee members and the advisory boards, so that we can figure out, phrasing.
So last you and I chatted on email. We're waiting for a more thorough scope of what was going to be covered in the meeting. I mean, I can get those out. I guess I was hoping to get that sooner than later and kind of give a little bit better idea of what was going on to try to entice more people to be able to come.
Of it, like letting people know ahead of time.
Should probably do a save.
Probably more important.
Yeah, okay, I can do that.
Cool, thank you. And thanks for getting that scheduled, and Counselor Nielsen for accommodating that date and time. So, thank you.
First on the community survey, what kind of responses we've been getting?
You're at 294 responses.
Are we participating in the Parade of Lights?
Yeah, if you'd like to. So on Friday, staff were having kind of our team building holiday exercise luncheon. So we're going to be decorating the sweeper and I think one of the utility trucks. We could do more if the council would like to go. I think the mayor got his entry in for his truck and his huge inflatable in the back. I know that you guys are all involved in different things as well. So if you want, we can have a truck and trailer. And if you want to come help decorate Friday, you can do that, or we can decorate one for you. If you're already on floats with other events and things, if you want to stay warm on the side and wave, that's fine too. So whatever you'd like. Do you want to be in the parade? Do you want me to prep a float for you?
Oh, there's a lot of options here, you know.
Can we drive the street sweeper?
Especially in code.
Or don't even let me drive the sweeper.
Right with the inflatable in the back.
Very possible.
Yeah, if everybody wanted to load in the mayor's pickup, we could get some signage on it.
Bundle up and hang out with Frosty back there.
What is the frolic doing? Do they have a?
Frolics doing the people hauler, they're kind of large wagon. I think we're just having it hauled by a pickup truck. So they're gonna get together Saturday morning and just throw a bunch of lights on and maybe try to get a canopy over it or something. So they're doing that Saturday morning.
Okay.
So
Are people interested in doing something for free? Besides Council Causey?
I don't have a burning need yet. I would certainly support the concept if there were people that want to do it. I would come.
That's exactly how I feel. I'd be more than happy to go if I'm not the only one.
So the smoldering need of it.
Council Andrade, do you have any interest?
I will be busy that evening.
Councilor Nielsen is probably.
If there was a hospital bed on the back of a truck, that would work out perfectly well for me.
I was thinking about pulling one on wheels behind my truck. My rope.
Fishtail all over.
Chris,
There you go.
We can light you up.
I'd like to be able to decide based on the weather on the day of.
Me too.
That does not sound like a commitment to me.
Okay.
is everybody comfortable with the concept of going in the mayor's truck and focusing on decorating the truck and doing that? Or are you comfortable with that?
I was thinking that we could also do a trailer and have council behind.
I can get a flatbed trailer. that we can also have decorated and be prepared. I mean, we could try to get a canopy on it. It looks dry at this point, this week through. I mean, we'll plan for worse, but it looks like it's going to stay dry, just be cold.
Do we know if Councilor McMorrin is in town? yet, or does-
At this time, Counselor Lehman, the forecast was an 8% chance of rain.
Oh, that's too risky for me.
Well, we can follow, now that we at least know what people's relative interest is, we can follow up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be
It
happy
sounds
to-
like, well, it sounds like there's enough interest there. I'll plan to, the plan all along for Friday with staff was to do that as a team building exercise, was to decorate floats together and have some stuff. So we'll just make sure that we
A
plan
bunch of folks.
accordingly. Yeah, I mean, it's put lights on, but again, we're gonna have 20 employees, so I mean, if we 5 or 6 employees, a vehicle, it'll be plenty, so. More than enough. So we'll just plan to do a trailer. I'll work with the mayor on hitch size and all that stuff to make it work.
If there's only 2 of us,
There's more.
Yeah.
I've got 3 commitments.
hear that commitment.
Yeah.
It's 2.5, bro.
I'll trailer for 3 of us.
Councilor McMorrin will be back.
I might jump on there too, maybe 4. Somewhere or something. You never know.
Yeah. Okay, I'll work with the mayor. We will have a float for you. So the side of that is supposed to be at the school at 6 o'clock with your best smile on for the judge. I'll have to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest. So the mayor's gonna take a lap at 6 o'clock and just pick out like the best float. That'll be the mayor's award. And then we'll just be in places and ready to go. So honestly, if you guys showed up at 20 minutes till 7, that'll be plenty of time for you to get on the float at the high school.
Yeah.
So find a place to park and try to get to the float by 20 till, quarter till. Should be plenty of time. So thanks for being interested in doing that. That'll be fun.
And then I'll just mention one thing. Last week or a week and a half ago, I had Chris reached out to all the folks in Mill Pond Crossing with lot line adjustment issues. And then I followed up with I volunteered to try to orchestrate a coordinated approach so that everybody can try to get coordinated and look at paperwork in a short order of time so that we can actually get this thing moving forward. I've heard back from everybody except for 4 people. So I followed up with all of them today. We're gonna see how it goes.
The response has been good from the neighborhood for the most part. I think there's still some frustration of people that got right on this and were ready to go months ago. But there's been an equal number, at least an equal number, if not more, that hadn't taken some steps to get themselves in a position where they were ready to proceed. So I think the considerable effort's been helpful. I really appreciate the mayor volunteering to take some of that on and kind of be a neutral voice there, which has been helpful. And I will just add, we just got word this afternoon that some of the funding that Mill Pond was waiting on for the methane mitigation came through today. They just got their acceptance letter, and it's actually a forgivable loan, $300 and some odd thousand. And so that methane mitigation that's been on hold because of lack of funding will start immediately, and they'll get them back out there doing the studies and the sampling that they've been on hold for over the last couple of months. So that's good news.
Wait, so they paused again?
They hadn't been doing some of the methane mitigation because they didn't have the funding for it. That funding just came through today.
Mitigation, not the monitoring.
Right. Well, no, I think both.
Both.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
both. Yeah.
Because it happened the previous time, right?
Well, it's been on hold for 2 or 3 months, I think.
It happened a different time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been the same.
So anyway, that's what we got. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Oh, wait, no, we have an executive session. Oh, my favorite.
And we won't have the action after.
Okay. Then I will go with option B.
The other day I was reading through the Plymouth News and there was an interesting article in there about percentage of the populations that were rent burned and how Corvallis is the is the leading city in the state. And the number that stuck out to me was that 40% of the residential units in Corvallis are rental units. And I'm really concerned, given our proximity to Corvallis, that we're about to suffer the same fate here. And I know we talked at our last meeting about a housing committee, but if I could encourage us to step up the pace on putting that together, I really do think we need to look at our development code if we want to ensure that our children have an opportunity to own a home in this city.
So on top of the list, we're coordinating with the with the committee selection for January.
Sure.
And the idea was to then look at those applicants and then make that happen. Councilor Crocker?
On those things, I understand there's a lot of companies that own a whole bunch of rentals and that the state has been looking at a way to limit that. Does anybody have any updates on that? Is that really going to happen or not?
It'll probably be discussed at the next session. Whether they can do anything is.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing on the legislative session is that the governor doesn't believe that the short session is enough time to really get the input and feedback and buy-in on a lot of these housing issues that she would like. And so, you know, I've been tracking this on the wetlands issue as just one kind of segment of this that's come into it. And what we're hearing is that it'll probably be in the 2025 session that this really gets a hard look at as far as the governor's task force on housing and everything, that it's really going to be 2025, the 24 session, the short session. Governor Kotek does not feel is going to be sufficient time to get all that buy-in. So I wouldn't expect a lot of big sweeping changes 2024. I think it'll be 2025 long session. But that means 2024 is the time to be feeding our legislators information that they have, so that they're ready in 2025. And the consortium's working hard on the wetland side, but there's several other bodies that are getting input there. We're updating our development code this year as well. We've got a good start on economic, or the commercial and industrial or residential be next in line. So again, we're in a good spot to be taking a hard look at those. I did, and Council Lehman, your point, I was hoping to get that on this agenda to have at least applications or something for both that and the housing and the economic development committees that I'd like to move forward. Literally just didn't have time. Even this morning, I started pounding stuff out and just had too much other stuff going on a Monday. So that is high priority. Again, I would expect for January, we'll have that some policy in place of what they're going to be doing, what the expectations are, get an application process out there and try to open that up. So it is very much top of mind. I was hoping to have it this month and just literally didn't have time.
Okay, so the Philomath City Council will now meet in executive session for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660H, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct this discussion. Designated staff, the news media, and other designated persons shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. No final decision may be made in the executive session. At the end of this executive session, we will return to open session and immediately adjourn the meeting, as there will be no additional. Would remind the council members and the staff that the conferences in this executive session belong to the city council as a body and not to the individual members. These conferences should only be disclosed if the city council as a body approves such a disclosure. If a member or a staff person does not believe that they can maintain these conferences, then I would invite that member or staff person not to participate in the executive session.
We're still up.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll use your restroom.
A color theme for Saturday night, right?
Dark.
Red, white, and green.
Okay.
Like a Christmas theme.